Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the middle of the order. We are continuing with our TOPs today, our second week here for the channel and for the podcast. In today's episode, to start off the week, we have the Milwaukee Brewers. And boy, this might be one of the biggest drop-offs of the year, because looking at this team and looking at this roster, I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you guys. Last year they were 92-70. They finished 17th in runs for, but they were never known as that offensive team. They were known as the pitching team, and last year showed it. They were first in ERA and first in runs against, or runs allowed. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. They finished first in the NL Central, third in the NL overall, and how about fifth in baseball, fifth in the MLB. They have the 17th pick in this year's draft because they lost in the playoffs in the wild card series to the Arizona Diamondbacks 2-0. They got swept, and it was not a good series. Our first playoff team here for the TOPs here. Who they added? Well, let's start with a couple of re-signs. Wade Miley and Brandon Woodruff for that rotation, although Woodruff won't be around at all this year. Eric Haase joins the club. Joe Ross, Rhys Hoskins, that's a fun name there. Jake Bowers, Taylor Clark, Gary Sanchez, Jacob Junis, DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and I think the biggest thing that they're happiest with, the Jackson Chourio extension for 8 years. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, Chourio. I haven't seen too much of his game, but I've heard great things about the young kid. They also are adding Pat Murphy to the management squad. New manager, Pat Murphy, and that's because when we look at who they lost, the first guy that they'll remember or miss or hate, Craig Counsell. He is no longer the manager of the Brewers. He's the manager of a rival team, the Cubs, who we'll be talking about sometime later on this week probably. And so new manager. And Craig Counsell is out. But that's not the only guy who's out here, because we have quite the list. Carlos Santana gone, Victor Carantini gone, Brian Anderson, Andrew Chafin, Julio Teheran, Josh Donaldson, Darren Ruff, Luke Voigt, Jesse Winker, Rowdy Tellez, Eric Laurer, Adrian Hauser, Tyrone Taylor, Abraham Toro, Mark Canha, and if you don't think that's enough, Cy Young ace Corbin Burnes is also gone, traded to Baltimore. And that is a huge list. Not all those guys were the big contributors last year, but still a massive list of guys who are no longer on this Brewers staff. And maybe that's why I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to the team they were last year. And the first reason why is that rotation. Because without Brandon Woodruff healthy on it, without Corbin Burnes leading the way, it loses some depth there. You have Freddie Peralta as the one, and let me just say, Freddie Peralta, I'm expecting big things from you this year. This guy's been the 3 in the rotation for the last 2 years, and this guy's got ace stuff. So now without Woodruff unhealthy and Corbin Burnes out the picture, I'm expecting a big year from Freddie Peralta to lead this Brewers staff. Wade Miley, number 2, Jacob Junis in the 3-hole, Colin Ray for 4, and then DL Hall, one of the prospects they got back from Baltimore in the Corbin Burnes trade, rounds up that rotation. The bullpen is still fantastic, may I just say. The Brewers have always had a great bullpen, and it's led by Devin Williams, who now without Josh Hader in the NL might be the best relief pitcher and closer in the NL. Devin Williams leads that way. Joel Payamps, he had a resurgence with the Brewers at the end of second half last year, so we'll see how he does. Trevor McGill, Hobie Milner, Taylor Clark, Joe Ross, Bryce Wilson, all guys in that bullpen there. The Brewers have a very nice bullpen. And they still have a somewhat nice lineup. Leading off is Christian Yelich, MVP in 2018. He's the DH, according to Fangraphs, on a day-to-day basis. William Contreras, brother of Wilson Contreras, also a catcher, and he is a catcher batting second for the Brewers. Sal Frelick, young kid, right fielder, bats third. Rhys Hoskins batting fourth, playing first base. Willie Adames at short. Garrett Mitchell, another one of the young kids, in left field. Then, of course, Jackson Chourio, The youngest kid hasn't played a game in MLB yet, but he's the organization's best prospect and third overall in MLB. He bats seventh. Bryce Terang, the second baseman, eighth, and then Joey Ortiz, third baseman, another prospect that came over in the trade with the Baltimore team, bats ninth. The bench has Scary Gary on it, Gary Sanchez, the backup catcher, Jake Bowers, first base / outfielder, Andrew Monasterio, another one of their younger kids, and Joey Weimer, another one of their younger kids. So there is young talent and guys who I like, who I can see, really blending well together and clicking together. Blake Perkins isn't even on this list here, according to Fangraphs, and I think Blake Perkins, the little bit of time he played last year was also looking pretty all right. So we'll see, when he comes up, if he gets a chance to come up this year. Of course, the injuries, there's only one that's a major one, and then that, of course, is Brandon Woodruff. He's expected to miss the entire 2024 season with a shoulder surgery. Maybe if everything goes well and the healing is great, he'll come back at the end of the season, but I'm pretty sure he will be missed by the Brewers staff. And then also Wade Miley, he's had some shoulder soreness since spring training started, but he should still be good for the opening day roster. And like I said, there's a bunch of young kids, but there's also a couple of old guys, as they have some options coming up for the 2025 season as we look ahead in their free agents next year. And the only two major free agents that are definitely going to be free agents, Joe Ross, who they signed to the one-year deal this year, and then Willy Adames, their shortstop, who they traded for with Tampa a few years ago. He is going to be a free agent after the end of this year. But they have a bunch of options on guys. Rhys Hoskins has a player option he can choose to opt into. Then the club has a couple of options on some guys. Devin Williams, I'd expect them to take that one. Colin Ray and Freddie Peralta, I'd expect them to take Freddie as well for $8 million. Absolutely, lock that one in. And then a couple of mutual option guys, Wade Miley, Jacob Junis, and Gary Sanchez. So who knows how many of them are free agents? They could have 2 free agents, or they can have 10. So it really depends on how the year goes for the Brewers, because I don't know, if I was a Rhys Hoskins here, I mean, depending on how you play, of course, is a big thing as well, as he is coming off a year where he missed due to injury. So he has not played since the Phillies playoffs in 2022. All right, so let's dive into this team a little bit and talk about the Brewers and why I'm not as optimistic on them as I am some of the other NL Central teams. And we'll start by talking, of course, about the new ace of that Brewers staff, Freddie Peralta. Listen, Freddie is great. He's an all-star in 2021. Last year, he was 12-10 in winning games, 3.86 ERA, made 30 starts, so he was there healthy. Only 165 innings. For me, that seems low, but that was also his career high in innings. And 210 strikeouts. So he's got a nice fastball, and he pairs it well with his off-speed. But, I do expect big things from Freddie this year because, to not take over for Corbin Burnes, because, Corbin Burnes, he had his off days for sure. But, when he was right, Corbin Burnes was part of the reason this Brewers team had been in the playoffs, how many years, the last couple of years. Like, they had been around recently. And, I think right now they're in a retooling stage where they're trying to get some of their young guys in and losing some of their older guys. Corbin Burnes, I'm pretty sure he didn't have too much longer on his deal left if he is a free agent after this year. Let me see if I can double check that really quickly. But it's just tough because you're going from a trio of Corbin Burnes, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta to Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley. He's going to be 38. He's not as old as he once was. And I do have it here. Corbin Burnes is a free agent after the 2024 season. So, they only get him for 1 year, if that makes it any easier for you guys, Brewers fans. But, were the Brewers going to be anything this year regardless? Maybe that's why they ended up trading Corbin Burnes. Their young talent, although they have a lot of it, it's not to MLB level yet, or they need to have a year or two of just seeing what they have. And, if the guys are clicking, if Sal Frelick's going, if Garrett Mitchell's a star, if Bryce Terang, Jackson Chirino, if all these guys are going, you have your stars still. You have Yelich, you have Contreras, you have Hoskins, hopefully, and Adames that can, elevate you guys into contending this year. But for me, it's always been the last few years with the Brewers, pitching is perfect. We need to get the offense going. And when I look at this offensive lineup, it's almost the same as last year, just with a couple of, the kids getting a little bit more time, and then the addition of Rhys Hoskins. And Rhys Hoskins, as mentioned, coming off injury. Like, I don't know if I can trust that. Yelich leading things off in the DH, he's not what he once was. He and Bellinger have the same career path, essentially. 2018, 2019, they're the best players in baseball battling for MVPs, and then COVID happens, and then they're both are not the same. Yelich, at least not as hard of a fall that Bellinger had. But to be fair, Yelich has been still a center core and a piece there for the Brewers. Last year, 144 games, 153 hits, 278 batting average, and an 818 OPS with 19 home runs. So he is still a good ball player, a lefty outfielder if you need him still. But I just don't feel like Yelich is the, 100 OPS guy he once was, or 1,000 OPS guy he once was in 2018 and 2019, which were his, MVP year, second in MVP, All-Star, Silver Slugger years, hitting 44 home runs. Like, you can say maybe COVID interfered or something. Like, it doesn't matter. He's not the same player. His average, his OPS, for the first time is over 800 since 2019 last year. So, can Yelich still have that? Is Yelich capable of a 2019 form? Maybe. I wouldn't bet on it, but, he's only going to be 32. He's still on what I would say is the younger side in all of this, but I don't know if I'm going to be trusting Yelich to carry the Brewers until 2028, 2029. Like, it just seems unlikely. But you never know, right? Maybe Yelich does have a good year back and is a huge part in that outfield, but one player who I do think is going to be a huge part in that outfield, Sal Frelick, the right fielder there. Kid came up, and he looked good. I can't lie, he looked good in 57 games, 47 hits, 246 batting average, and a 692 OPS. Yes, those hitting numbers don't blow you away, but it was mainly his speed and his defense that were really blowing me away. In his first game, he had, I think, a couple hits, a couple RBIs, and then 2 outstanding catches in the outfield. His defense, paired up with Garrett Mitchell and Jackson Chirino, that young outfield core of those three could be something really special over the next 2-3 years. I just think it's still missing something this year, or at least they need time to, develop on a major league field playing against major league talent. It's different than when they're all playing in AAA together versus playing in the majors together. It's a whole other dynamic that, some of these kids are going to take a little bit more time to get used to. They're not all going to click at the same rate as each other. I think Sal's going to have a good year, OPS above 700, maybe a couple more home runs. He only did have 57 games, so that's maybe, a little bit of a season, but I think getting over 125, 30 games this season will help Sal, be a better ball player and help the Brewers in any way he can. There's other guys too that we can talk about here. Devin Williams, I mentioned, is maybe the best pitcher in the NL right now, coming off his second All-Star appearance, 2022, 2023, back-to-back All-Stars. He finished 19th in MVP voting last year. He won Rookie of the Year in 2020. In the COVID year, he was 7th in Cy Young because of how good he was when he kind of came up into the league, essentially. But since then, and since Hader's left, he's been the new star closer for the Brewers. Last year, 1.53 ERA, saved 36 games, 58.2 innings. He blew 4 saves, so a 90% save rate, not bad. Only gave up 4 home runs. His screwball is disgustingly good. And, obviously you're going to need him out as many games as you can, and any close game, having him there is going to help the Brewers get a chance to win those close games. That might help them, throughout a 162, game season. But there's going to be games where, the Brewers are up 5 runs, and then you don't need to go to Williams, so you go to somebody else, and then the other team comes back, and by that point, is it too late? And then if your starting pitcher falls behind, gives up 3 runs, the Brewers going down like late in games, I don't like their chances in a lot of comeback games, a lot of walk-off games. It just seems a little bit harder for the Brewers this year among other years. And like I said, it starts with the starting pitching. That's going to be a huge drop-off for the Brewers this season. And I mean, when you look at the other teams in the Central, the Cubs are gaining traction. The Reds are young and fun. And if their pitching is going and their young kids are, throwing, like, it's going to be tough for the Brewers to kind of compete in that NL Central this year. I'm not saying they won't have that chance. When I think of the teams that I'm thinking are to come fourth in the divisions, for example, we talked about the Mets on Friday. I feel like the Brewers, who might come fourth in their division, will have a better chance at coming first than the Mets will at a wild card. Like, it is a different level of like team here. There's still talent on this roster. William Contreras. I mean, this was a guy that I thought was just going to be a backup catcher for a long time when he was playing with the Braves. Obviously they had other catchers and Travis d'Arnaud and now Sean Murphy. That's why they traded him to the Brewers, a part of that trade to get Sean Murphy. I mean, last year, his first year with the Brewers, and it was great. He shocked me. A full season for him, 141 games essentially. 156 hits, a 289 batting average, an 825 OPS, Silver Slugger and catcher, finished 11th in MVP voting. He was really good. He surprised me a lot. And I mean, if that's the kind of catcher that the Brewers now have, and if he can replicate that kind of season, I mean, that's a key part for the Brewers going forward here. He's locked up. He's got his years on him for sure, because he's going to be, arbitration. Yeah, he's going to be a free agent in 2028 at this rate. Like, there's your catcher locked up for the next 4 or 5 years. So I mean, you're good in that department, and it's not even like it's a mediocre or average catcher. No, William Contreras had a great year last year. So I mean, there's parts for the Brewers here that can click and that can go. I just don't see a way for them to get through other teams in the Central as easier as I'm seeing it for those other teams. Like I said, the Reds, their ceiling is higher than the Brewers. Yes, there's more major league talent, I would say, on the Brewers ready to go. But if the Reds click, and they click properly, I mean, when these two teams play, it's going to be hard not to bet against the Reds. Like, I would take the Reds, the Cubs, Cardinals even. Like, they have I would say the Cardinals and the Brewers are the best comparison in the NL Central, because it seems like both of the offenses are kind of what makes a team, like, good essentially, or on paper, like having Nolan Arenado and Goldschmidt for the Cardinals, Yelich, William Contreras for the Brewers. It's just the pitching that's so shaky. And for me, in the last couple of seasons, the Brewers, for me, as mentioned, has been about the pitching. Having Corbin Burnes and Brandon Woodruff as that 1-2 punch got the Brewers to NLCSs, to NLDSs, like to making postseason constantly, because 3 out of 5 games, in a regular season, they're winning it because Corbin Burnes is throwing 8-inning gems, and then Woodruff comes with a 7-inning gem, and then Freddie Peralta comes in and strikes out, 13, 14 guys. Like, that was an elite 1-2-3 trio, one of the best rotations in baseball. And now Corbin Burnes gone, Woodruff injured, and it's Freddie. And like I said, I'm having a lot of hope for Freddie. I think he's going to have a good year. But, a pitcher can't carry a team, and I'm not going to be trusting Jacob Junis and Colin Ray. DL Hall maybe can turn into something. He's young. He's had a couple, 1 or 2 starts with Baltimore in the majors. If he figures things out, and if he has if he develops into something, great. 38-year-old Wade Miley as the 2 guy. I mean, listen, Wade Miley is still a good pitcher, and he can still get you outs. But to be the number 2 on a playoff team in 2024, That's crazy to me. I do not see that happening. So for me, it's the starting pitching that lacks the Brewers here. The young kids are fun. Like, I do like the names. I do like Sal Frelick, Bryce Terang, Joey Weimer. Like, there are names here that, for Brewers fans, you can still be excited about. And I think this year is still going to be an exciting year for you guys to watch your kids, to see how they develop, to see what you guys have there. Because if it is on paper, great. And if everyone is, playing above expectations, the Brewers can make a playoff run, 100%. But I think the pitching, you need to get a little bit more. So, if they're leading the division by a lot, do they trade one of their younger players, one of their prospects, to go get, pitching help again? It would be weird if they trade back for Corbin Burns, but I don't know. I feel like the Brewers' chances this year lack due to the starting pitching. That's kind of where I've been going with all of this for the last 10 minutes, wrapping this whole thing into one. The FanDuel over-under, last time I checked, 77.5. That's a great line, to be honest with you, because if I was just going to pick a number off the top of my head for Brewers wins, I would say 79. But, seeing the 77.5, seeing kind of how the Cardinals go, how the Cubs go, and the Cubs aren't done. They can still sign somebody, but I don't know. It's hard to say that the Brewers are going to have, like, there are sometimes you see a roster and it's like, yeah, like, I like the kids and like I'm going to bound the kids. And other times it's just like when you do that, it blows up on your face. And I think I'm going to take the under on this one. I don't think the Brewers hit 77, or I don't think they hit 78. I think they get less than 77. So we'll stand with the under here. We'll stand with the hopes for the Brewers to have a nice year. But, prove me wrong, Milwaukee, because I think there is talent up and down this lineup. I think Freddie Peralta is a bona fide star, and he can be a great pitcher for the Brewers this year, but it's those 2 to 4 guys, 2 to 5 even, that have me scratching my head a little bit. But give it a year, give it 2 years, and this Brewers team will be back fighting for playoffs. I'll tell you that for sure. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening to this TOP. This is the first one today. One more at 11 o'clock. Be ready for that one. And we've got 8 more this week. So our second and third of the TOPs come out this week. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. And I will see you guys next time.